Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Talk Architecture and another interview special. And I'm so excited to have Associate Professor Architect Cheah Kok Ming from the National University of Singapore. I've known him for some time, a contemporary in terms of in the academic world, and a bit about Kok Ming. I call Kok Ming, yeah.
Hi, everybody there.
Hi, Kok Ming. Thanks again for coming. And a bit on him. He's also the assistant dean at the College of Design and Engineering of NUS, and he has a lot of awards and on teaching excellence. Oh, I like you already, And
okay, thanks. It's a good start.
Got a good start, and and mentoring his younger peers. I know him through Kevin Matlow, who is kind of famous in this Talk Architecture podcast. Anyway, Kok Ming and I, we also were the external examiners for Taylor's University a few years ago. And Kok Ming leads a studio at sophomore and M.Arch level. And I like to start with this, Kok Ming. The first question is based on your biodata, which it is quoted as a design educator.
Mm-hmm.
You believe in designing the problem statement that has little or no precedent solutions. The aim is to get students to understand the issues and be able to ask the beautiful question to direct their ideations and actions. So I've been inviting you, and you had graciously attended a lot of our design thesis crits and interim crits, especially that I've recalled. Obviously, the Petaling Jaya Old Town, remember, and all this.
Yeah.
And of course, from your your own, because that was during the lockdown, so there's a lot of Zoom online teaching and interactions. So, based on your understanding, or why do you quote this? Based on your experience, why is it that it's best that the student come up with a beautiful question when they're dealing with the design thesis, for example?
I think first of all, I think maybe you all know that the studio and is the bulk of the design education kind of a learning format, and there are many kinds of design problems that we sort of scope for the students, right? It all depends on the learning objective. I mean, if it is about a kind of practice-oriented agenda, then I suppose we will dish out social building, community building, commercial building. It's a kind of design problem for students to deal with the complexity of it. And it may have a taste of what practice is about, and we're preparing them for industry. But I tend to see design education in a larger way that's slightly beyond giving students a very defined or a known problem. I think what's important is that my fear actually is that when you give them a known problem, there is always a known solution.
Yeah.
And then some students will short circuit the whole process of learning by just adopting the known solution and starts to tweak superficially the form, right, and the treatment of plans on the known solution and pass it off as their solution for the design. So this is something that I'm really against, because I think students need to know the fundamental issues of be research informed to begin to understand the crux of the problem and how that problem is really made up of interrelated issues coming into to make that problem in existence. So I think that's the important thing. We're getting students to do that research, getting students to do that survey, getting students to go out to the site, getting students to talk to the people, getting students to find out from the manufacturer or even read out science or technology or certain things they intend to deploy as a way of understanding exactly what is that problem. And sometimes the problem that exists on its own, it doesn't exist without finding out. So by finding out, they actually seek the problem and it could really define the problem. With a way of defining the problem, I suppose they could really set up a series of objectives. Okay, how do I go about solving? Now that I know this problem exists in certain ways and it's constituents that makes up the problem. Now, how do I deal with it systematically? I think this is the thing that I'm trying to get them onto the kind of platform so that the first thing, of course, there's no precedence in that. No complete intact precedent. There will be in precedents in bits and pieces which they need to consult, but there's none in the impactful way. And they will have to be, of course, understanding the problem. Then they create the solution, and the outcome of it, to me, is it would be or may be an unprecedented solution, and that's important. And it's really good. They've gone through a informed or research informed process that leads to such a solution. I think that's, to me, is a very important aspects of design learning. I mean, in Kevin's words, I mean, the content and form as a relationship.
Yeah, we recall that, and we have discussed in this podcast about content versus form, or content and form. And as you recall, when we did the Petaling Jaya Old Town, for example, Raymond's Market.
The one where he also has a farm, an urban farm within the market.
Sort of farm up there. So he actually defined the problem that the market typology could be expanded because of the needs of today or something like that. Make an example that it could be self-sufficient. He added those problems, but he had to deal with the fundamental problems of the contextual aspects of the site, what the community need at that time, linking to the library project, which is on a bus terminal. Remember there was
I remember that. Yeah, I mean, those are very unique cases whereby students, I mean, probe into a very specific site and even community needs, and they sort of, and then this in a way generates an understanding of what would be the best kind of solution to stitch up the gap in the kind of urban condition, right? This is exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
and then in achieving it, I mean, you could see there's a hybrid of ideas. The hybrid ideas includes, like, for example, in the case of market, there is a conventional market, and then of course what is not conventional is a vertical farm, right? A vertical urban farm, where it exists, of course, different format elsewhere, but to contextualize that in the context of PJ, in the context with a community market, then the dynamics are very different. This is where the inventiveness of students is being demanded, right? And the demand really comes from, the reaction to demand really comes from an understanding of each constituent of the problem and each constituent of a solution that could be adopted and to be hybridized in this case. So it's exactly what I mean by setting a problem with no immediate known solution.
Yeah, for the listeners out there, I did interview Raymond Boo on the market before. You can scroll the Talk Architecture podcast and listen to the interview that I had with Raymond. And I think that also we go into the question that I wanted to ask earlier on design problems in architecture design courses in architecture school as compared to design problems in architecture practice. What are the main difference? So we actually starting this discussion because, of course, in architecture practice is a limitation of time, and short-circuiting something is being encouraged, because you need to go and present to the client with deadlines in mind that is shorter than what you can explore in architecture school, where you, as you can mention just now, defining the problem and how you can hybridize later, and the student can set off in a tangent on their own, because they at first we were guiding them. Later they became their own client, so to speak, in a way that they empathize. So what do you think about this? The question of the difference between tackling a design problem in school compared to in practice, and why do we need to get graduates well equipped for the challenge of practice, but we do it differently in school. When they go into practice, they're sort of equipped somehow to deal with what is it exactly the formula that we're doing in school that makes them equipped. I mean, if you want to answer that way as well, do you think?
I think fundamentally the way we design problems in studio, what's important is what is the learning outcome that we want to define. I understand that the Malaysian schools are very practice-oriented, right? And which means that it's so important that students acquire a set of skills. And in the way the studios are designed, it all deals with building types. Right? In year one, the typology of a dwelling, and then second year, community projects, and then probably cultural buildings, and of course leading on to a high rise, which could be commercial. So there is this building our scale as well as building our complexity of typology. The intent is very clear. The intent, of course, is to get students exposed to the kind of common typologies that's available in market that architectural practice will engage in, right? So students get a taste of how do you plan such buildings, or how does this building sit on local context, dealing with the bylaws, dealing with the terrain, etc., etc. So those are very clear kind of learning outcomes in which really prepare students well, so that when they go to an internship or the year out, and eventually, of course, graduating, there is a sort of a smooth transition from knowing how this works into an industry whereby they are not in it for a cultural shock. Things are really familiar to them. So this is one form of, I guess, problem defining that really has a certain seamless connectivity with the industry. But then there are also other kind of studio projects that are what I call very forecast based, in the sense that you are of course this ties in with the first question you asked me about unprecedented solution. So this is where forecast based in the sense that you get students to making projection and speculations into the future. This could deal with issues like what happens if there's that, say, for example, a certain township could produce 100% of food, say eggs or say vegetables. What does that mean in terms of land use? What does that mean in terms of integration of farms with the city, etc.? Things that hasn't happened, but that projection is really important to in a way at many levels. One level, of course, getting students to understand those issues and getting students to become inventive, and also at the same time, the outcome, the speculation, the forecast of the outcome in which the problem is being addressed in a kind of speculated form, will lead a very interesting discussion with various stakeholders, the stakeholders of town planners, the stakeholders of even just people living in the township, and even with farmers, where they could come in and have discussion. And architects has that, of course, the ability to visualize, envision what that means. And of course, when the stakeholders comes in, it could raise interesting issues. If this is where we want to head to, what do we need to do now? It's kind of a reflective thing. Are we in a position now to be ready for that journey into that future in which we can produce 100% of our food amongst our housing, right? So this is the kind of I guess problem determining that there is in a way a look into a crystal ball in the future, and I think architecture students have the ability to do that crystal balling in an informed and in critical and intellectual way that certainly brings a certain value to our intellectual discussion concerning stewardship environments, concerning stakeholders, livelihood in the future. This is what I mean, that the different kinds of problem finding that could.
Okay, this is not really technical solution, but this the students will have to read a lot, obviously, knowing about just for example planning, what is happening in our region, for example, in Southeast Asia, and how does the situation with Singapore, for example, if the question come to climate change, for example, and what happens if the water level is getting higher, and what are our strategies? So it become strategic planning, it become physical planning, urban design. So the solution becomes in a bigger scale, a massive scale. So the students will need to read a lot on some interdisciplinary subjects, and then you said bringing in the town planners, bringing in other interested parties, and the focus is on architecture students, and the focus is on National University of Singapore architecture students. What is the sort of students, the students that, able to engage such discussion? You're looking at outwardly, where the architect, you're looking at an architect graduating from NUS is able to engage with planning issues. So there is no discussion about, we cannot engage in planning because we're not planning students, or no, that sort of this is the tone that you set up, and it is intentional that students, every single student in the NUS will need to deal with at this level of speculation of the future, is it?
Yes, I would say when we reach the final year, fourth and fifth year, because when you say that students do research, it's a collaborative effort between the educators and teachers. The educators set the kind of a learning framework, design the platform, the scaffold, sometimes in collaboration with certain parties. And these parties could be planning agencies. These parties could be national parks. This party could be water agency, as a way of looking at specific kind of future projection and to see what it means in 30 years time, 50 years time. This is important because the skill sets that architects have, of course, one, of course, is, as we have mentioned, go to the industry and serve the industry. The other skill sets, I think, is kind of broader, which is important in the sense that it gives them, I would say it's a kind of life skills, a set of life skills that allow them to think in a strategic way, to ability to learn how to learn. I guess all architects are trained in the sense that you get a brief, another brief comes along that could be very diverse, and your job is really to learn and find a way to understand new topic. How do you frame the topic, and within that short time, how do you begin to have a great insight about topic and the kind of problems that the stakeholders are facing, and then of course to develop the solution leading that. So in this case, we are cultivating that kind of skill sets, right? Ability to ask questions, the ability to talk to them, the ability to conduct interview and survey. In a guided way, so that when they are out there, at least not just in the practice, but they may want to redefine their career, different kind of creative practice they want to go into. At least there is a framework for them to set up to think, how do I begin this? Who are my clients? How do I strategize? How do I make projections about future, and how my career or how this practice is going to be steered towards? I think this is where we are looking at the kind of broader life skills that we think a student should have, and it's within the framework of architectural education what we can provide them, so that it's not just the student, but what they produce, what they offer. It is not just what we call it learner centric, but there's a value to a larger ecology. So in this example, I just say the larger ecology, of course, are the stakeholders, are the agencies, are the I suppose the planners, and other and the topic itself, and the topic under investigation itself gets a mileage in covering new grounds. So this is what I think this is the the value of inculcating this form of problem defining, and where the solution is a speculation, an informed speculation. I mean, if I were to be detailed about it.
Informed speculation, there may be some readings, there may be some exposure to economists.
But it is a work together. It is like sure, the leadership here is largely driven by the supervisors. I use the word "s" in the sense that they come together and the collaboration that sets. I said that sets the resources, that sets the learning framework, that sets the accessibility to some resources, information, some building visit, right? In that case, and also some means of bringing expert in to give students a kind of broad, comprehensive understanding of the issues involved, to equip the students. This
is a design thesis project.
This could take place in fourth year as a kind of what we have is called option studio. Okay, maybe just to give a framework. I mean, the first 3 years is really about like part one, where the students are equipped with fundamental design skills, so that by the time third year, second semester, they could design a simple building, right? A simple kind of a small community building, able to resolve how it works and contextual planning and all that. So fourth year is whereby they are given an exposure to, I mean, some people call it units, but we call it option studio. Each studio has a certain thematic first, right? It could be looking at food security. It could be looking at some projects in overseas, in Jakarta or in China, or certain ideas, the ideas of, say, for example, sharing cities, or the ideas of what makes a hybrid building. These are the exploration. The purpose of exploration really to equip students with a kind of problem defining skills and the research informed capability to lead a thesis inquiry when they move on to their fifth year. So you could see there's a relationship between the way the fourth year is scoped leading on to the fifth year.
Fifth year is generally what? How is fifth year done in NUS?
Fifth year is I think like most architectural school is the final thesis, where they spend a semester doing the research and then 1 semester in executing the project itself, in a broad way.
Yeah. So what's the main difference between what you've seen in University Malaya and what you have in NUS? Is that there's fundamental?
I suppose strengths. I see I see in UM, I see in Taylor's, I see in UCS. They follow a very tight kind of a framework prescribed by Lembaga, right? So I see the advantage in the sense that once they reach the fifth year, the set of points are really strong and technically sound, with the setbacks and the regulatory compliance all in. And in an open market, in a competitive market like that, I mean, these graduates certainly have a place. I mean, at least in Singapore, we sought after some of these graduates from Malaysia, right? In the sense that from the angle of technical grounding, in terms of, I mean, knowing the different typology of building, going up the scale to fourth year. These students are very strong, right, in that sense, right? So, and if I'm looking for candidates who could do speculative kind of endeavor or design as a form of research, then I'll be looking for students who have done speculative design, students who have done such, crystal balling, doing research and kind of proposal that just like I always remember this MVRDV project called I think it's called the Tower of Pigs, which they look into if they will consume meat in the way they are consuming now, given the kind of space they have, they won't have space enough for the conventional farm, and farm needs to go, meat farm, livestock farm needs to go higher. And of course, the entire process is very well informed. The research, the need to create a stench radius so that housing doesn't get affected by the farm and all sort of things. So it's all went in, and then in the end, the result was that you want to consume meat the way you do. This is the tower of livestock buildings that you're going to have. Do you want it? Do you want to live with that? So it's provocative. It raises an issue, right? Either you say, if you want it, okay, then how will you stay with it? If you don't want it, how are you going to cut down your meat or alternative to meat? So it raises interesting questions like that, which are very important. And then I think the industry has a demand for many skills. I mean, the clientele has also demand for many skill sets.
I think in the spirit of learning, if in Malaysian schools they were to do more speculative and research-based, for example, like a provocative project, such as what you mentioned just now, it's something that is to do with the learning environment or the accepted. Obviously, you can't do this in practice because there are logistical things. But architecture started with illogical things in the past, and now it seems that it's viable to build them, So they in a way, architecture education are dreams, dreaming up, in a way. But because the pragmatic side is also how much you want to pull the students' pragmatism down. How much you want to the results to be pragmatic is because it's the spirit of learning, isn't it? How you could agree to disagree with each other. I mean, this is what like the AA school did, because there were different schools of thoughts. Was NUS okay? I think it's fair if I were to ask you, how in architecture school, if you have something like that where you allow all sorts of thinking or a strong theoretical base or a philosophical base in terms of the different attitudes, in terms of how much dreaming can be done. Do you think that would be successful in the US? Is that a way to go?
I wouldn't call it dreaming in a sense, because I think the way I see that, there is a context, right? The context of NUS architectural education is such that it is situated with Singapore, right? Island state with no hinterland, with no natural resources, right? So it also, which means it also has a broader definition of skill sets that architectural students need to have, right? On one hand, you have the practical skill sets that could serve the industry. I mean, how do you get a project started? Knowing the bylaw, knowing the practice regulation, to facilitate the process. On the other hand, you also need to, especially in the context that we are in, to really make projections about what are threats to the environment. Seawater rising are real, because it could just take out a good percentage of a lot of usable land. Food security is very real, but we only produce 1/4 of our eggs, right? So there are real speculation of we can produce 100% of our vegetables, and that will mean a kind of integration into the housing. Water problem is so real. You and I know about it, right? Once a while, we get that. We get noose around our neck, in a sense, right? So that's real, and that is something that is true. That kind of speculations, that kind of informed speculations that we have over the years create interesting models of water bodies that are not just for a repository of water, but they are also double up as recreational ground. They also double up as a backdrop in a housing estate that helps to boost the real estate of housing. I mean, so these are experimentation that did not just come out of the blue, but through, I guess, training of the minds, and also the context we are in, the kind of context we're in, that we are constantly making informed speculations that becomes a needed skill set in our case, right? So context is something that's driving us to think that such skill sets are essential as facilitating our mind in realizing their dream.
Yeah, constantly making informed speculation is something new for me to think about, because I'm thinking, where do the NUS or Singaporean architect go to? Obviously, they will be absorbed by the Singapore architecture and construction industry, or as teachers, not only in Singapore,
Yeah.
but I suppose that this sort of skills that you said that will make the difference in terms of employability, in terms of able to engage with international issues and be working
as well as it's an interesting point, as well as even looking at their own life, because some of them will begin to speculate and ask what if questions on their own architectural career, and to reinvent possibilities. I mean, I have students that ask, okay, a set of architectural skills. If I were to expand creative practice, that is not your conventional, where else can I go? What else can I do that enable me to have a career that my sort of architectural training enable me to do? So I have interesting students who have gone into, for example, form of experience design, where they take what they learn in architecture in terms of spatial experience and kind of sequence of experience into designing events, so that these events are not just two-dimensional cluster with graphics, but there is a certain spatial quality in the way they lead the discussion. So they have a niche on their own. And there are some who went into education, early childhood education, that using design thinking as a selling point to enable a young person, a young child to develop certain life skills. So they are also successful in that sense. So in a way, we are giving them a kind of skill sets that which they can reimagine, not in a wild way, but in an informed way and a careful to speculate their own career. What if I'm going to do that? What if I'm going to do that? All on the basis of what architectural education can offer them as a kind of a potential to move into allied areas. Okay. So it is not just for the bigger picture that I was talking about, but it's also relevant for them to look at alternative career path without sacrificing the kind of education they get.
Because this is something that is, from me, my viewpoint, because I have students, graduates who come to Singapore to work, or to China, and they seek out to learn from different countries and to test themselves and challenge themselves. But I can see them fitting in Singapore because of, like you said just now, the more technically competent ones, and they flourished. And I've seen them.
Yep.
And they went back to Malaysia, and they become much better at their own set up their own companies and so on. But because we only have about 7 minutes for our session here.
Time flies. Time flies while I'm having fun.
I would like for you to say something about the educators, the architectural educators, in the context of it is to do with the supervisors that you said just now, in collaboration,
okay.
That collaborate with the students and that determine the framework of how the graduates could be very self-sufficient and able to create their own independent framework of how they're gonna their career paths, or how they're gonna be employable, or to start a journey of being part of society, which can serve society or make a difference. So there has to be a certain sort of supervisor, or you can't really say the institution can create a person, but that particular quality of the architectural educator that is that exists in schools in Singapore, and in particular NUS. So does it start with the supervisor themselves being on top, or really busy with research themselves, with it's not one kind of practice is a practice that is celebrating research and oriented towards research, because then the student, like a master apprentice sort of model, it will rub on, or they could actually know how to do it, because their master or quote unquote supervisor has that attitude, or that not only attitude but their way of working and seeing things, right? I mean, this is a Singaporean, to me, this is a Singaporean existence. It happens in Singapore. I'm just asking because this is something new to me. That's why, should the main supervisor for the design thesis be a supervisor that is from the industry, interested in education? Do you have people coming from the industry rather than full-time staff in NUS? And although the student is monitored by the school, but the main collaborator, if possible, could be an architect with a deep understanding of the design thesis or architecture education. What is your opinion on that?
I think like most schools, even Malaysian schools and all that, supervisors, we do have a mix of full-time academics as well as part-time practitioners on board with us. I think it's not which is relevant. I think it's more about the attributes of these supervisors to me is more important. So what are the attributes I'm talking about? I think first and foremost, I think that they all have a certain design criticality, right? In the sense that they could bring to the table or bring to the studio a certain way of looking at design, helping give students a certain framing, a certain kind of lens to examine things, so that in the context of thesis, that there is a starting point. Okay, where is the platform that we're going to do this discussion? Or what are we going to examine? So I think that's very important. A kind of design quality, a kind of lens in which students could be guided to see things or to understand the issues. And the second thing, of course, is that while I say that there is a certain framing, I think the openness and the receptiveness to see students' proposition, I think is also important. So that it's like the idea is not to say, I'm always have issue with master-apprentice relationship, because master-apprentice relationship is always about do this. There's a whole methodology from step 1 to step 10. You do this. But the question here is that, sure, at the end of the day, the students could deliver the 10 steps and there's a wonderful scheme. My question is that, have they learned? Have the students learned? Or they just learned the method, but have they learned how to think on their own? Have they been given a framework to think rather than a method to do? So at the end of the day, it's like, so long you do this method, this is what you get. I mean, to me, I think what's important is a kind of mental ability, a kind of capacity, an intellectual capacity to think how to formulate. So anything throws at him or at her, they could deal with it and they could formulate an answer rather than to follow a prescribed method, in a way, this is something that I'm always fearful of in a master and apprentice relationship, right? So that's why I say the openness and receptive to the way students learn, the way students see things, and how as a supervisor could facilitate that. I know if there are a pitfall, how do you guide students out of pitfall? If there's the strength of a student, how do you build on the strength? And that becomes very, very important, right? So in a way, this leads to what I call it's a certain pedagogical appreciation, right? How students learn, right? You're not going to force upon the students, but you could understand this is the strength, this is the weakness. You can even know that. You can even be knowing that what is the effectiveness of their learning. Have they really learned, or they just find that you are, that's a way of doing things? Have they really learned? So that's a fundamental question that I guess the supervisor should be in a position to assess and to know, right? Because sometimes we always talk about architecture as a tacit knowledge. It's like, okay, somehow you look at this thing, yeah, the student has done this, like a sense that he has said no, but tacit knowledge, to me, I think is very subjective and very personal, but if we could translate that tacit knowledge into something that is, I suppose, articulated, could be expressed, could even be translated into something objectifiable. Okay, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to learn, and to demonstrate it, rather than that sense that, that sense of knowing that you know it. To me, I mean, that's a very kind of a subjective kind of situation. So, of course, last and foremost, I think each of these supervisors should have some kind of expertise, right? And to bring to the table. And of course, bring expertise. This also, I think, to me, in today's context, whereby a lot of I suppose problems that we face in our built environment in cities is always very complex. And I also begin to question that can a lone supervisor be adequate to provide the kind of learning needs and kind of diversity of knowledge that the students need, whether we should be rethinking of the kind of a studio format in which is it run like a lab with a few people of different expertise leading, so that there is a kind of a good mix of a way of looking at things, good way of knowing things, and a more, in a way, multidisciplinary, leading to an interdisciplinary kind of solution in some of these problems they face. So I mean, your question really leads to this rethinking about what thesis supervision is about and how the setup should be something to be considered that could be made relevant for the kind of world we are in and will be in.
I think, that probably the way I listen to this, and there is a certain standard of critical thinking, which the supervisors in NUS would need to have themselves, the expertise, and so that there will be one or two odd students who didn't really learn how to think and got away with it, but at most would come out with learning how to think. And I like to quote when you said, the mental ability, whatever you throw at him, and is able to, he or her, able to formulate. And this sort of, we call it design methodology or something like that, where you replicate when they are in outside. I mean, when they graduate, that they, it's like a lifeboat for them, or it's like a lifesaver for them. If being thrown into the ocean of industry, that they could actually have this ability to learn how to think for themselves, because it may be so simple. Surely university students would need to learn to think for themselves, but they started when they came into the university not able to learn, not able to think for themselves, and they learn to think for themselves and be able to be on their own later, and be, like I say, if you're doing a PhD, if there's a viva, you are being examined to see whether you can actually be a scholar, meaning you can stand on your own and supervise somebody else. So is that the standard that NUS trying to have in their graduates? Just the conclusion. You can do a conclusion after this. Thank you, Kok Ming.
I think, I mean, for me, I see it as a kind of life skill. You want to elevate to a PhD level scholarship. Well, I call it a kind of, maybe there are different grades of it, right? Okay, on one end, you have your scholar researcher, but I'm talking about life skills in which a student could ask simple questions of what if, what if sounds like a dreamy question, but after that dreamy question, leads, if there's this enthusiasm and this motivation, then that question leads to a series of, I suppose, steps, of intellectual and critical steps to find out if the what if is possible, or and of course that leading, if it is possible, how should it be made possible? What do I need to do? What do I need to learn? what do I need to acquire to make it, or who do I need to engage, or who do I need to bring in to make that possible? So it is that sort of questioning, and also in a way strategic thinking, and in a way a kind of formulating a kind of methods to fulfill the simple question of what if. Right? I think to me this is an important life skills, because it not just deals with project that you are that could be about the future. It could be a project that's about 2 years' time to be ready. It could be, like I say, your own career that you want to reconsider, that could be competitive, that could be pivoting on your strength. Right? So to me, it is a life skills. To me, this is a kind of architectural training, what architectural training can provide that is also relevant across a scale, right? A scale of individual and a scale of projecting into the future.
Okay, I get it. Thank you, Kok Ming. I get it. That the supervisor guide the students, I mean, especially in design thesis, is the sort of the testimony of competence, where the students are given some sort of freedom to actually to decide, what sort of expertise could help inform on the project. That is part of the whole thing about the research idea of what is research and how research could help with the design. So I think that in a way we do have that sort of discussion with our students, and sometimes we try to remind them, you could do very well with an acoustic expert, or you could do very well with talking to a social scientist and so on. Yeah, and we hope that they could be independent with that sort of knowing that what they went through, they could replicate it or approach things in that manner afterwards. I could understand what you're trying to say. Yeah.
I think that sums up in a way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Kok Ming. Would you?
Thank you, Naziaty. Thank you so much.
Hopefully, one day we will have more of this sort of discussion. So
yeah, looking forward to it. I heard there's this. I mean, I think Tony and and we also, they have this chat platform they are in.
Who's having it again?
Huat Lim.
Oh yeah,
and, yeah. Tony Liu, and then even we also. So, yeah.
Yes.
What is it called? Is it a clubhouse or?
Did you go into the clubhouse?
No. I've not gone in yet.
I've been there.
It's quite an active session, I was told.
Okay. Yeah. You can actually hear the recording, actually, if you go to Clubhouse. In some of they call it the Clubhouse. There are many Clubhouse. You can get the recording of such sessions. And okay, we do have those discussions. And the one that I'm continuously discussing is on architecture education and practice and the importance of the design thesis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the focus is on that. It's always been that sentiment all this while. And my audience could be also people from who are interested in architecture education themselves. I know for a fact that some of them are from the Lembaga themselves. So I have to make it open and free for them to access.
If it's interesting, because this also raises the power of online, and also the imagination of educational services. I mean, this is what I learned, that at least within the Chinese market, they do have returning students from Ivy League. And they find that the Chinese educational scene is big and wide, where you have schools of different tiers. Some schools are really about practice oriented, and some students in these schools who wish to apply to overseas to study would want their portfolio or want their own design powers to be improved tremendously. So they are constantly looking out for a kind of tuition center, a kind of tuition center in design. So they do in the Chinese market, these Ivy League students, they set up a kind of on the net kind of service in which they do provide things like how do you write a good dissertation, even a studio and a studio platform in which you learn to refine your design so that you are more prepared for an application. They even have lectures and all that. Of course, the branding here is that using learning students with Ivy League backgrounds or any top schools background as a selling point. And the mode of transaction is interesting. You buy a ticket, a coupon, a booklet coupon. It could be a few $1,000, a few $100 coupon. And with the coupons, you could access to the different kinds of classes available. It could be a dissertation writing. It could be Studio 1, Studio 2, Studio 3. So I mean, from a lucrative angle, so you can imagine how money is made. But from the service providing angle, I mean, you could also see how these hungry students, hungry in the sense that they really students who want to build a career and want to have education could be going on these. Why I'm raising this is because it also opened up a kind of ecology of learning and I guess education opportunity. And also what I also noticed on the ground on the receiving end was interesting because we do get master students from overseas applying, and I find that in the recent years there is a certain homogeneity in the portfolio. It's like all the portfolio coming from these countries have a certain has a certain way of presenting it so that the thought processes, the intellectual inquiry behind the project is being demonstrated, right? And the way the projects are being represented is not just a technical information, but there's a certain storytelling that makes it very persuasive. So it's a very interesting things that's going on in the kind of larger scene in which educators of all sorts online, ranging from practitioners to returning students to even, I can imagine retired professors are really involved in this ecology of its own. So it's an interesting kind of thing where the internet brings about this kind of ecosystem going on. Yeah.
Yes,
because you mentioned about club room and all that. In a way, these things feed us, you see. Yeah, these things feed us. So on some platform, they are a lucrative kind of a venture.
I think the online platforms allow people from anywhere in the world to come in and listen to what's happening in Malaysia and Singapore and so on, because they are curious. And like 40% to 50% of the audience on Talk Architecture that I'm doing the podcast come from overseas, from anywhere else. A lot from English-speaking countries.
Is your platform free or it is paid?
I do subscribe to it.
Okay, so it's a subscription. Okay.
Yeah, I do spend money on it.
So in other words, the viewer who wants it needs to subscribe to your podcast.
The paid content is, I'm just starting some paid content, which is specific to the topic that somebody was interested in getting into the paid content. I started with one to explain from my own expertise the difference between the research dissertation problem statement or problems and design thesis problems, the difference. Because I think that some academics would like to know the difference, because some actually think that it's similar, But of course, that could be a bit naive of me. But maybe internationally, they would engage with this topic differently. So it's just an experiment on my part. But yes, I do pay a subscription to run the podcast. And a lot of people try to justify doing these things in the bigger agenda of other things that they do, that they sell in other ways. But what is interesting, I was going to say something that, architecture theory classes that I did during the MCO or the lockdown period, I uploaded in YouTube, and there were thousands of viewers, meaning that people were interested in. There was a particular session, an hour session, introduction to architecture theory, which is kind of like based on my slides, and I just go on, and there was a small me, and then people appreciated that. So what I'm trying to say is that it is a lot of people want to find out free content, because there's a lot of content out there, and you can talk about artificial intelligence also, Chat GPT, and all these issues around learning architecture through Chat GPT as well. But Chat GPT is limited in terms of some topics. I tried it myself to see how much detail it can be. It's not that detailed, but architecture is a very specialized course. As a broad course, it's still specialized.
It is. In fact, someone, my colleague was doing a Chat GPT sort of a key into, I think, about Lim Chong Kiat. So of course the business is very little. So he came back quite fantastic CV. That he has designed the National Theatre, he has designed the public housing and a whole lot of things, So sometimes Chat GPT could get things wrong in a sense.
Chat GPT, if it's correct, you can use it, the basic ones.
Yeah.
The basic, like a rudimentary sort of base, but you would know whether it's right or wrong,
That's why it is like a research associate, basically. The Chat GPT is a research associate, but you as the user should have a bit of a grounding, or at least should have a means of verifying. Right? As a research associate, it plows in the thing, right? So you have to look at it, and then I think you look at a critical eye, whether to what extent this is real, to what extent this is useful, or to what extent this is insightful. I think that's a due diligence. It is a fantastic research associate.
Yes, it is. So we had almost an hour together on our past our 40 minutes extra. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna stop recording now. Thank you all for listening, and see each other in a different episode. Thank you.